Well, I want to begin today with a question, and I want to list several characteristics of something and let you tell me what the something is, okay? I'm just a teacher, aren't I? I just love to do that sort of thing. Uh, Ask a question. Well, the things I wanted to mention were consider something that is invisible, affects everybody, brings, at least often, brings suffering, or maybe always, I don't know, whichever, suffering and death, uh, and is certainly upon us. Now, what would be an answer to that question? What might that be?
Well, the virus will be popular, probably. Popular answer.
Popular answer. What's another answer?
Did you say surely upon us?
Let's retract that one because I wasn't sufficiently careful in how I phrased it.
No, I just didn't.
It's just present. It's just present. That's all.
Sounds like ego.
Yeah.
Time.
Time.
Sure.
Ego.
Fear. Hey there.
Ego.
Hey there. That's what I was thinking about. The others are just as good for that matter. Fear is produced by the ego. The ego is invisible, of course. It affects everybody, of course. Do you deny the ego? Not a good idea. Do you not deny the virus? Not a good idea. You can do that both if you want. But I'm just suggesting, I'm putting up some parallels here between the ego and COVID. And I'm saying, and then remember chapter 21, the section that says responsibility for sight. It says that everything that you see or that happens to you or you encounter is due to your thoughts. The ego is due to your thoughts. I would say COVID is also due to your thoughts. Is COVID the exception? Oh, everything else is due to your thoughts, but not COVID? Well, I've looked in here, but I'm pretty sure it's not in there. Of course, COVID is not even mentioned. I'm just saying that COVID is probably an outpicturing of all our thoughts, like in an overall average collective sense. Is it due to your thoughts? Well, only when you see it, feel it, whatever. Same thing with the ego. Is the ego due to your thought? Well, only when you accept it into your mind, you see. And so I'm trying to set up a correspondence between these two things. Now, when you look out upon the world through your television set, probably, and see someone suffering, what do you see? No suffering. Really? Yeah. Suffering is not real. Well, I know it's not real, but looky, the people are moaning and groaning here. It doesn't matter. It's not real. What do you feel? Compassion. Why? They think it's real. And they're your brother. And you don't snub your nose at your brother and say, oh, you silly person, it's not real. That's not compassion. That's not what Jesus, I never seen in the New Testament Jesus snubbing his nose at some sick person. Heal me, master, I've got palsy or something. It's not real, go away. That didn't occur. But he didn't heal everybody. I mean, how could you heal everybody? Wave a magic wand over the whole world and all sickness gone. Well, don't wait for that, because we actually learn how, through the process of the healing of our mind, we actually learn through seeing consequences of our thoughts. Doesn't that make sense? I mean, suppose that I could just think all the negative thoughts about you and everybody else that I wanted, and I never had any consequences of any sort. Heaven's doors were wide open. God was still smiling. My body felt great all the time, and I was happy every time I trashed somebody else's front lawn or whatever. Well, I would never learn to think like God thinks, because I'm not seeing the consequences. The Course says your body is a learning device of the mind. That means there are going to be consequences for your thoughts, whatever thoughts you have. And the Course just reminds us that we're responsible for those thoughts, and those consequences just let us help us to see that, oh, maybe I need to see this differently. It is my thoughts that are producing this. Well, I'm not saying your thoughts produce viruses in the air, by the way. I'm not aware of that. I'm not, no, it's your breath, actually. And it doesn't produce it anyway. It just blows it here, there, and yonder. I'm saying you're responsible for how you see the effects of the virus. I'm not saying you're responsible on a physical level on producing virus. We don't, who knows how it started? That is a question. I suppose it started with an animal. I don't know. Maybe it started in a lab. I don't know. Doesn't matter how it started. What's important is not giving it importance. That's what's important to you and to me. And I'll bet you anything that every single one of us, and I will include myself, have given COVID importance in our minds. Last week, if not the week before, and maybe the week before that. And we're probably planning on doing it tomorrow as soon as we get home. It's nothing except what you make it. And the same's true for everybody else. But again, that doesn't mean you snub your nose at it, because there are people that are suffering. Okay. And compassion is the appropriate response for that. They are in pain. Jesus never approached a sick person and said, why are you so sick? Why do you think that way? Why don't you just stop it? In fact, usually he would give, if I remember the New Testament correctly, it seems like he would give people an activity to do. No, maybe not always, but sometimes. I remember him sending someone to a river or a stream to wash their eyes several times. Do you remember that? You know, I'm not saying he always did that. Sometimes he said, take up thy bed and walk, you know. Well, that's an activity right there, I guess. But that was, I don't think that's because it was needed intrinsically. I think it was because that would simply help their learning. You may have a different view on that. I don't know. Yes, Matt.
Sometimes, from what I understand in the Bible, he would say to somebody, do you want to be made whole? And I have a question too. Speaking about the ego.
Oh, okay.
Does Jesus anywhere in the Course, I don't remember wherever Jesus said that we can get rid of the ego completely totally. Did he get rid of his ego?
Yes. Well, get rid is not quite the right word. He transcended it. I mean, he didn't kill it. He didn't try and beat it to death, you know, or anything like that. It's just that he got a place where he never listened to it. He never heard it anymore.
He never listened to it.
No.
But he didn't get rid of it, though, per se.
Yeah, he didn't kill it. It's not a living thing, after all.
I have a reason why I asked it. Thank you.
Well, yeah. I believe that he said that's one of the last lessons that he learned.
Last lesson that he learned.
So it doesn't mean that. I'll just throw this out here and see what you think about it. I don't think that means that for us, our last lesson has to be that we got rid of the ego. We
just don't
different.
listen to it anymore.
Well, no, I'm not. That's not quite what I meant. And maybe this is a question that we don't have to even know the answer to, for that matter. We all understand that there's an ego and it speaks in our minds and tells us things that do not serve us. And so the question is, will we ever reach the place that Jesus reached? And the answer is yes. Okay, will we do it in this lifetime? I don't know. You see, but we will reach it at some point. And that point is not listening to, you will not enter heaven listening to the ego. That's all there is
But he
to
did
it.
say that all these things that I do, you can do.
I believe that
Even
entirely.
more so.
Yes, okay, let's say it that way. There is the possibility, but not the requirement, that in this life, you will cease listening to the ego. I don't think that we need to concern ourselves overly with that. I think that what we need to concern ourselves with is not so much whether we whether we still hear the ego, but how long, when you do hear it, do you believe it? If you can get it down to half of a second, you're in good shape. You know, how about a nanosecond? Well, we wouldn't be able to perceive it on that scale. But if on the other hand, we're still, if the appropriate unit is not seconds, but hours, days, or weeks, then we're not in good, you know, in that sense, we're not near that position at all. So this is how long I stay with the ego. The Course says, make it this way, make it this long, make dot, dot, dot. And then by the time you get it down to a few seconds, it really doesn't matter, because as Abraham assures us, you have 16 seconds to change your mind before other influences join in the chorus and make it louder than it would otherwise be, and we don't want that. So I don't concern myself with whether I listen to the ego too much. I concern myself with how long do I keep its thoughts in my mind. You know, it's like if there's a little blimp, you know, these oscilloscopes that they attach to sick people to check their heart. There's something or other. What, I don't know what they're checking. You know, they go and be a little blip, a little blip of some sort. Just make the egos little blips. You know, don't make it your constant thing, and don't make it the thing that you listen to for an hour or so. Now, this requires vigilance, because the ego is deceptive and tricky. I mean, the ego doesn't put in your thoughts, let's just go kill somebody. It knows you just dismiss that. It puts in your mind, let's turn on television and see COVID real. Because you might not dismiss that. Let's turn on television and see a car accident. You might not dismiss that. Let's see an explosion where 30 people were burnt to death. You might not dismiss that. Here's what the Course says in summary about that. It says disasters are not real. The things I've been mentioning are what we would call disasters. So the next disaster you see, and in a certain sense, the news is simply a whole series of disasters focused upon. See, the world thinks this is a little bit different. When there's a disaster, the world says, let's make it as real as possible. Let's focus on it, okay? The Course says, well, disasters are not real. Don't focus on it. Focus on the people that believe it and send them love. Send them light, because that's what they are in need of. The actual quote says this: disasters are not real, and reality is not disasters. Well, that was pretty easy, actually. Reality is heaven, so I already know that. But no matter, disasters are not real. Reality is not disasters. And then it says, and to know this is the greatest love that you can have for others. So if you want to love others, do not see their disasters as real. See them as real, as they really are, and they're the same as us. They're a soul or a spirit, and their body is just the learning device. The learning device can be quite harsh. We are all aware of that. You know, sometimes it's not, but lots of times it is, yes.
And so therefore it teaches only love.
That's right.
And when you are presented with the world and it elicits fear, learn, as the lesson says, to change your mind and see, do not separate yourself from your brother, but see him as the same.
Yeah, we need to avoid the thought that, well, if others are seeing this as disaster, then they must be in a really bad shape. Oh, Lord, their minds must really be sick. You don't want to go there. All minds are sick. It doesn't matter who's sicker. We don't have a contest here to see who can be the sickest. We're in a contest that involves we're not really in a contest, but if we
Yeah.
were, it would be about healing the mind, which means not seeing anybody's mind as sick. I mean, it's not that it isn't, it's just you don't want to focus on it. Because what you focus on grows, you know. And we're here for healing, not growing more sickness. That's really not our process. So think of all these disasters on TVs as opportunities given to you. Here, let me give you another opportunity to see this as not a disaster. Okay, I got it. Well, let me give you 2 more. Okay, I got it. Let me give you 100 more. Oh, it's too much. Can't handle that. Well, you can handle 1 or 100 just as easily.
They're all the same.
They're not real. That does not mean they're not real for the people in the situation. You know, and therefore, let your concern be for the minds of the people who believe it's real, instead of making it real to yourself. Yeah.
As we look at everything around us, is the way we look at God. We don't know what God is, but we can see the reflection of Him in what we look at and what we perceive.
We can, or we can see the reflection of the ego.
Teaching only love is a good thing to go through.
Absolutely.
But to know that what you're really looking for is what God is. And so we have to get there somewhere, and that's why ACIM came along.
Yeah. So I say that God is love, He is peace, and joy eternal. I see God as not being able to do anything but love. He doesn't have another, on His internal machine, if He had one, there wouldn't be a knob there that said love, not love. Love, so you can turn the knob to love, or you can turn it to not love, or you can turn it from love to judgment. He doesn't have there is no knob. Now, that's not the common view for many people. Many people feel that God has produced COVID or the earthquake or whatever. The Course says that's absolutely not so. If you must go to the cause, look to your own mind and to the minds of others. But we're really not too concerned about how it came about. Again, you know, how did COVID come about? Well, what caused an earthquake? I don't know, some plates, tectonic plates shifted. Well, what caused them to shift? Well, blah, 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 blah. You could go on and on. There are physical causes. But that doesn't really matter to us. That's not what's important to us. What's important is how you see it. It is an opportunity, given to you, and in some cases given to our whole country, if it's a big effect like COVID, or a huge hurricane that, you know, drowns half the people in Texas or Louisiana or someplace. That looks like a big effect, but it doesn't matter. In either case, it is an opportunity for you to let your mind be healed, and that's why we're here. COVID is a learning device, in a certain sense. It is an opportunity for you to learn to heal your mind. And the ego is going to say, well, no. You got to see things as they are. People are suffering. You can't just write that off as if it didn't occur. That's insensitive. It'll say stuff like that. But what we want to do is to not see it as real and still be compassionate. You want both. Because the people on the screen are in the hospital, can hardly breathe. Well, they believe it's real, or at least most of them. I hope none of them do, but I suspect. I'm afraid that many of them do. We tend to believe what our body tells us, do we not? That's a mistake, by the way. But I'm not encouraging you to try to overcome it. I'm not encouraging you to put your hand on hot eye of an oven and say, "Oh, that terrible, terrible pain that I'm feeling is not real." No, just keep your hand away from it. You see, You use common sense. Just because the world brings us lessons, we don't have to go out and invite more. It has plenty of them. So, you know, you don't have to make up an artificial one, but putting your hand on something hot like that and burning it. That's just not, it's not loving yourself, because it hurts. Now, if you're beyond all hurt and pain, yeah, sure, just put it there, whatever. But who's in that position? Nobody that I know of. We feel through our
Well, it
senses.
reminded me of something I heard. It said this guy jumped off a cliff and observers were standing there, people were looking. He said he's going to defy the law of gravity. And another one said all he did was illustrate.
Illustrate the law of
Proceed to
gravity.
illustrate.
Yeah, he's an illustration. Yeah, we don't have to go around and expect the law of gravity to be annulled just for us. The world is not set up that way. If it is, it's a miracle and an exception. I'm not denying that the exceptions can occur. But I don't go around expecting the law of gravity to be changed just for my benefit. You see? In other words, if there's a hole here, I'm not going to step into it so that gravity can be denied for me, and I'll just go across it. I'm just going to walk around it. You just use common sense about that. You do not bring unpleasantness knowingly on yourself. And we have a terrain here that is pretty reliable. We know that things fall down. When there's a hole, you fall in. It'd be confused. It would really be confusing to us if gravity oscillated up, down, up, down. Well, what a mess. It'd be like pieces of paper in front of a fan. They're just going in all different directions. How could you function in a world like that? So we need the repeatability of our ordinary law, of the ordinary laws of the world. We want electricity to work every day. It's not a car. Oh, you can't start the car. Well, electricity is not working today. Start tomorrow. That would be really inconvenient. Would. So we have a world with a lot of regularities that we can depend on to a large extent. In fact, sometimes they're so dependable. We can make all kinds of machines and instruments that make the physical life easier. But they are there so we can learn what our minds are thinking. They just help us. So never see suffering, but offer compassion for the one who does see suffering. And do not belittle him that he sees it. He has a right to see it, by the way, just as you have the right to not see it. Both are allowed here. So you can see as much suffering as you want. You can see as many disasters as you want. But the Course is encouraging you to not believe in disasters. You are allowing the ego to win that little contest if you believe that suffering is real. COVID is not real, but it is real to all who believe it. You see, it's just you don't have to join their ranks. It is not necessary. I don't think that means that once I give my mind to the ego, it becomes meaningless to say COVID isn't real, because you believe it is. You can mouth whatever you want, you know. But the heart of the matter is not believing what the ego is telling your mind. Yes, ma'am.
So if believing that the COVID is not real, for those of us that wear masks to protect another person,
That's called compassion.
but not necessarily believing the COVID.
But it's remembering that they do. Now, if they all quit believing in it, there would be no COVID, would it? You know?
I wish we could get to that point.
It doesn't matter. We just want to, because, well, I guess it would be nice. Sure, why not say it would be nice? But I expect the world will continue to be a learning device. And I don't really expect all people to let go of their egos tomorrow. If they do, that's great. But the COVID, there's no particular reason I certainly have no desire for COVID to continue, but in a certain sense, it's not what's happening out there that matters. It's how are you interpreting it and responding to it that matters. And I just want to keep that in mind. So when I say I don't care whether COVID continues or not, there's some truth in that. But I don't want to. But I don't want it to continue. I don't want it not to continue. That's beyond my pay grade, as they say in the military. I don't know what kind of challenges we need to experience. I have no idea. All I know is that if it looks disastrous, my part is to remember the disaster is not real. So whether it's COVID, I just don't. Okay, let's say COVID goes away, and the next year we get COVID number 44. I mean, plagues of one sort or another, and infectious diseases have been with mankind, I'd say, for as long as we can remember or count. We don't really expect them to go away. We get a little fooled here in our age because for bacteria, we did find drugs that were miracle drugs. The antibiotics. And they seem to be wiping the main diseases off the face of the earth. And we did vaccinate it against the virus, many viruses that plagued us, like mumps or chickenpox or whatever. And so it seemed like there was no disease. Well, that's great. I love that too. I'm thankful for it. But I think that just meant that at that time we didn't need those hard lessons for reasons, again, beyond my knowledge. I just don't know why. But I regard that as the exception rather than the rule. There seemed to be a condition in the earth that produces viruses and bacteria that attack humans as well as animals as well, for that matter. Somebody had a hand up. Yeah.
It's sort of like this, the COVID or any disastrous event for that is just a symbol of what we feel is real in our mind as a belief, that we can die and that we are vulnerable and that we can suffer and that we can succumb to things that are outside of us. And so then whatever disaster comes up is just a symbol, actually an opportunity to see what is in our mind that is creating this symbol for us to examine. And in the loss that we experience, then that's the opportunity to see what's in our mind, to see, is that real?
Absolutely. It's an opportunity for us to extend love to other people. And in fact, by not seeing it as real, the Course says that is the greatest love you can offer. Practically nobody believes that. But we can start believing that. So if you want to extend love to people that are sick with COVID or anything, it doesn't matter what, the greatest love you can offer is to say this is not a disaster. Disasters are not real. I know you can perceive it that way. I know it looks that way, but we're called on to not put that belief in our mind. And that is the greatest love that you can offer that person. It doesn't specify how you give that love. I mean, so if not, you can always, of course, pray for the person and send them love and light. You do not necessarily open up your mouth and say, hey, what you feel isn't real. That's not what they want to hear. In fact, the first thing, if someone is really sick, they're saying ow and moaning and groaning, they're having sores, they can't, having trouble breathing, you need to acknowledge their sickness. That's the first thing you need to do. You don't need to come in there and say, I don't even believe you're sick. Someone needs to usher you out of the room in case you cause that stuff. Let you talk to a wall someplace, but not to a patient, because, so you acknowledge that this person is in pain. You don't want to deny that. Somebody says they hurt you, to say, don't say, you do not. What do you know? It's not your hurt. And so you acknowledge it, but you do not want to strengthen it in their minds. You acknowledge that that's where they are right now. That's all. You acknowledge that. But that can change. Let's pray, or that may or may not be appropriate depending on the situation, but you can, in your mind, you can always pray for that person. You can always put their name on the board on Sunday, and you can always send them love and light. And in your mind, you can visualize them surrounded by love and light, whatever. But you do not deny their experience. Yeah, yes.
When we use the language of real and say that it is certainly a frontal assault on science and culture, which emphasizes the role of the sensory systems,
Right.
touch, eye, taste, feeling. So many of us find the language of real and not real. It's like eternality or persistence of something being, some things, quote, are much more realistic than others. So you started out with whatever your three questions were about what you were fishing for ego. It's like the Native American talking to his grandson who asked, Grandpa, why did you say this to one person who's coming here and the exact opposite to the other person? He said, grandson, you have two wolves. One's on your left and one's on your right. Depends on which one you feed.
That's the one that grows.
That's the one that grows.
That we're saying the same thing basically as
Yes.
that.
So it's an alternative way of viewing, although in a much more metaphysical and important way. Something's not, this is real and this is not.
You know, we have natural laws that operate in the world. You got a bicycle wheel here and you spin it, well, it just keeps spinning until something slows it down. But what the Course wants to emphasize, it doesn't want to deny that there are natural laws. It doesn't want to deny that if a virus is eating away half of your lung, you can't breathe. You know, what it wants to say is they're not the only laws. There is a higher law. And the higher law is a mental law of the mind. And if that mind is directed by spirit or the soul, if it's directed by love and joining, then the effects will be different than if it's directed by the ego. And so we want to use a higher law, and it can take the place of the lower level law. And when it does, we call it a miracle. It does not do so routinely. We need the order of the natural law to navigate in this world, you know. And so for the person that is struggling to breathe, you just accept his, not yours. You're not struggling to breathe. He's struggling to breathe. You accept his condition as what he says it is and how he feels it is. Always. You do not want to say to him, that's not real. Why don't you just throw something at him while you're at it? Pick up something and heave it at him. What the hell? But so you accept his interpretation of his reality. That's valid for him. But there is a better way to look at this, to see that you can start seeing this as an opportunity for you to love yourself more, to give yourself permission to breathe in whatever is brought to you with the Holy Spirit's help, not with the ego's help. There's two shoulders here. That's the same thing as Holy Spirit and ego, seems to me. And so you want to strengthen one and not the other. Yes, ma'am.
I just find it interesting and why is, I don't know if this is a question or not, but we've had pandemics and flus, viruses for eons.
Yes.
Why all of a sudden with this one do we have to keep on washing our hands and wearing masks and all that when we didn't have to with all the other ones?
Oh, we don't.
It just doesn't.
It's not like you're going to get shot if you don't do
I
that.
mean, yeah, but you go in the store, they require you to wear a mask.
Well,
Kroger's or one of the supermarkets, and you can't go in without a mask.
yes, you can. It's just people will fuss at you and maybe fine you and maybe send you to jail, but you can, not that you can't do it.
Well, they didn't do that back in 68 and 70 with all the other viruses.
Well, when the bubonic plague wiped out a third of Europe, okay, they would have avoided rats if they had known that the rats were the cause. I don't think they knew that, or maybe they finally figured it out. I don't know. But certainly at first they did not know that. Once you figure out that it's rat, you go kill the rats. And you avoid them, and you you take away the conditions in which rats flourish and grow. You see, that's wearing a mask. Well, that's more aggressive than wearing a mask. We don't know how to kill COVID. We know how to kill rats. You see,
In 1918,
and
they
so all we,
required masks.
what?
In 1918, they required masks.
Or did they? Was that the Spanish flu? Yeah, but we know a little bit more about things than they did at the time of the bubonic plague. We now know that it spread through the air. So we don't go around killing rats. They're not the problem. Unless they got, if they happen to have COVID, yeah, but we wouldn't know that probably. But it's not mainly spread by animals. It may have been started by animals. I don't know. You know, there's some thought that some bats started it. Who knows? But the main problem is it's spread through air, our air, not just any air. And we need to know more about it. Just like in the bubonic plague, once you realize it was rats, you'd like to know a little bit about rats. Where do they tend to live? What do they eat? Well, maybe we already knew that, but you know, about this, we don't know a lot, and so we're gradually learning about what this is about. So, and it's only reasonable to take common sense. Let's put it this way, Matt. Suppose COVID virus was, I guess it's a molecule. I don't know. It's a virus. It's a virus. Well, of course, it's a virus. It has more. So it's either so, but it is a molecular structure. Suppose that it fluoresced purple light every time you snapped your fingers. I'm just to make it more realistic. Anytime you hit it with a certain frequency, with a scanner at a certain frequency. Either you could think of it either way. I just go and snap the fingers. No, you know that you snap your fingers, turn the scanner on, and you see it. If you see this billowing cloud of red stuff coming out of somebody, you would put on your mask and step back. There would not be a question. There wouldn't need to be a sign that says, please put on your mask. All the sign says, just say, turn your scanner on. That's what the sign would say. Turn your scanner on. You see, the problem is it's invisible. It's very much like the ego. The ego is invisible too. It doesn't come into your mind saying, I am the ego. Now listen, all listen. It doesn't say that at all. It says, I am you and this is your thought. It just slips in. Let's judge that old guy over there. He looks kind of ugly and decrepit, and you know, so you do. But the ego is invisible. The virus is invisible. If it were not, that kind of question just would not even be abroad. So what do you do when it's invisible? This is what science tells you. It says, let's assume, since we can't see it, but we see the sickness, let's assume it's there. Let's assume there is a natural law working here that when you see the red billowing stuff with your little scanner and you see it getting on somebody, say, follow that guy. Let's see if he gets sick. And sure enough, you know, next day he's sick or something. So let's put one and one together here. And that's what we would do. You know, and say, well, that must be the cause. That's just the way we proceed here. The rat bites and you get bubonic plague, you figure it's the cause, you know. And so our process then needs to start with an assumption. When I speak it, if I'm infected, then I can have, there's something there that can transmit it to you. Do you want to be in its path or not? Well, if you are in its path, I hope you have a mask on. That evidently does help. But just as it also helps to step back, you see. So we do social distancing. This just makes all the sense in the world if it's in there. If you assume that indeed it's invisible and it's there, what I really want to know is how long does it take it to hit the ground? In other words, is it really 6 feet? It might be 5 feet. Hey, it could be 7. I don't know. But they've chosen 6 feet. I presume they have a decent reason for that. And but they should be doing studies about that right now, just to find, just to find out.
But I've also heard though that one can have the COVID and not have any symptoms at all. Doesn't even know that they have it, but they can give it to somebody else, and they're wonderful to know.
That's right. That makes it more complicated.
Other flus or influenzas, you wouldn't be contagious until 2 or 3 days after you are showing symptoms. This one has just like like measles and mumps and bacterias, they all have a different way they like to present themselves. And this one can show a few days before your temperature, your fever. Well, everybody has a temperature.
We know what you write.
But even your fevers, if you have a fever, that presents itself differently depending on the bug that you have in you. Everything has its own little critter. And like I said, we're learning about it. I am personally egoized. I am not a big proponent of the masks, but I use it in different situations because I feel we're at a point that kind of like showing the compassion, but I feel that I will wear it in situations where I can't keep my distance or it's required within a facility. But to me, it needs to not just be the mask as a symbol protecting, it needs to be other things. Washing.
And I do wear a mask when I'm outside, not necessarily here, but like if I'm going into a restaurant or if I'm going to an establishment, I wear my mask.
And I feel uncomfortable when I see some people where I think it may not be helpful. It's maybe more harm to them, but I just open up to it and try to figure out where they're coming from, and I feel good about that. They are a human being doing their part, their way, and that's what makes me feel good versus getting angry with them or something.
Yeah, human beings are free to choose in any way they want. God does not. God allows that while we're here. We have free will. And so our responsibility is to notice the consequences. If I point a gun at my foot and pull the trigger, there is a consequence. I will not do that again. If there were no consequences, I might. But there are consequences. And this virus is, by the way, a sneaky little virus. Because of just what you said, that you can get it and have no symptoms and give it to somebody else, and you may not ever manifest symptoms. Some people never get the symptoms. You see, so that there are just 2 things here. Virus hits, my system says to heck with it and doesn't accept it, kills it if you wish, or it just doesn't affect you, or my system is susceptible to it. And I do get sick. We don't know that. But we know that a lot of people are susceptible. And so again, you have to deal with that which is invisible. That seems to be our main challenge here. Because I know if you could see it as red gas, there would be no one wanting to go outside without a mask. I mean, you just wouldn't go outside. You wouldn't necessarily wear it all the time. It wouldn't be necessary. Because you could see, if you don't see the red gas, hey, you're fine. You see it when you whip that mask out. It's just, if you see a bed of snakes, you don't step in it. No. If you don't see it, well, you could. You see. Yeah.
So as we study it and we learn about it and get to know it and become educated, then you're less fearful about it. So we know it.
Right. Now, what the Course says is this. It says that the body has no creative ability that mind cannot control. So if your mind does not have ego thoughts in it, okay, and if it has ego thoughts in it, it will be telling you that you need to be sick, you're a bad person, you deserve to be punished, and sickness is a great way to do that. Let's just get sick. But it won't say it in that way. It will just simply it will say, turn off your immune system, please. Or turn it down. So, you know, and you'll say, oh yeah, sure, fine, that's great. You see. But if the mind is in a healthy place, then it has priority over any bodily process that might be occurring or expected to occur. The body has no creative ability that mind cannot control. You just want to make sure your mind will control it in the right way, you know, rather than open up to some sickness or other. It's no different than any other sickness, except this is very widespread, very contagious. A lot of sicknesses are not contagious, you know. But if you have, I think that when I was a boy, I had measles or something like that, and I had to stay home from school. I mean, it's not only that I felt bad, they didn't want me there, you know, because I might give it to somebody else. But you could see, was measles, well, it's pretty clear when someone has measles, or chicken pox is another example. You get all the red dots all over yourself. But this is not that way. This is a very sneaky one. So you have to handle it mentally. It's an invisible, like you do your ego. There really is a big similarity here. The ego's invisible too. And it just says, oh, it's just natural to listen to me. I'm your friend. Step in that bed of snakes. Snakes love you.
No way.
Just step in it. They love you. You see? Well, this virus is kind of that way too. It's invisible. There's no need to believe it's really here. Well, you need to believe it's really here. Not, of course, really, but not for you necessarily. But at the level of physicality, people are getting sick, period. You know. And so the question is, how do I best handle this? I do not see it as a disaster. So what? It's not a disaster. But that doesn't mean I'm going to step in the bed of snakes. Snakes are not real either. Snakes are not real. You know, we're told that the physical level is not real, and that includes snakes. No way I'm going to step in the bed of. But even if they're not poisonous, I still don't want to step in. You know, nobody does.
She does. She will. Mom will.
Your mom will?
She loves snakes.
She loves snakes. Well,
How long has she been?
Oh, yeah. When she was little, she would pick them up. And, she was.
I would hope she would know the difference between a rattlesnake and an ordinary
I'm
snake.
sure she would.
Yeah.
If not, she'd probably take it.
How long has she had this condition?
I have it too. It's not unusual.
You have it too?
We call it the Chisholm
Snake?
curse.
I like snakes.
Because she got it from her father and stuff. And it's an,
Oh my
they love all
God.
animals.
I think it's a little unusual. I would go on the other side of that argument.
She would. I bet you she would.
They say you can tell the poisonous ones by their eyes. Brown eyes are usually non-poisonous,
Shape of the head.
except with the coral snake.
Triangular head.
Well, yeah, that too.
Triangular head.
Coral
You
snake doesn't-
emphasize snakes. That's what we're on.
That's the exception.
Just kidding.
Are you gonna get out and look at their eyes?
Right. If it crawls and slithers along the ground, I'm just going to step the other way. No, I'm not going to get down there and look at its eyes. Thank you anyway. Okay. Well, let us leave all our snakes behind now and go in peace. How is that? Does that sound good?
Thank you, Bob.
I'd like to thank everybody for attending and participating here and there. We start our meetings every week by affirming that the light has come. So let's close the meeting by doing that as well. So if I invite you to stand, and we'll